Two places at once.
It's tough to do.
I'd have to be beside myself to do
So
it.
we'll open our meeting on the proposed building. A couple of the items that we need to look at is positioning of the building. And I know Joe was able to visit with Aaron.
We need to do introductions.
So that's true. So Melanie, if you would start with your introduction and of yourself, and we'll go around the room.
Melody Markinson, Choteau Canada.
Melissa Moyer, Health Department.
Deb Coverdale, EMS and DES.
Alan Gardner, Teton County Road Department.
Dick Snellman, Commissioner.
Joe Dellwo, Commissioner.
Keith Van Setten, Sheriff Coroner.
Paula Jack Nettie, Clerk and Recorder.
Thank you. Joe did talk to Aaron at Staley, and I'll let Joe,
Okay, so Staley contacted us and wanted us to meet with him. He was at Butte. So I went after one of our meetings and sat down with Aaron, and he said that he's at an impasse. He needs to get direction on us whether we want to go with the drop floor or the flat floor. And he gave me two updated drawings. And the issue is, if we stay with the flat floor, which is cheaper, the drop floor is going to add more expense, so we'll be able to finish less of the building. If we go with the flat floor, it's pretty darn close to the sheriff's office. So that's what we need to discuss today. That's what we want to do.
So how close to the sheriff's office are
There's the
they're
difference.
saying in two different options?
it looks like one lot.
One is 78 feet to that corner. And this one is, what's that say, Keith?
53.
So it's gonna be 20 some feet closer
25 feet closer.
With the flat.
with the flat.
And what is the cost difference between the two
He
options?
did not give me that information, but he said it would be more expensive to do the drop floor and, I don't know, it's just, the question is, can we live with it being that close to the jail, to the sheriff's office?
Are there other considerations besides just the proximity to the sheriff's and like the floodplain stuff that would make us lean one way or the other?
Well, he didn't say one way or the other. I asked him that question, and he said his comment was that, yes, the lower part of that building would be more prone to flood, but the way that they designed it, it would be basically the ambulance bay
Let's get floats on.
and the search and rescue.
Yeah.
But it would be, he said it's out of the floodplain. They can do it legally, but he said if you drop it, it's gonna obviously it'll flood
Higher
sooner
risk
than-
of, yeah.
The potential.
And the other issue that he talked to me about was even if no matter which way we move this building, because he's just moving it either north or south, the proximity to the alley to get the ADA slope on there is going to require us to build up the alley. He said not a lot, just a few inches, which I found interesting. You'd think an engineer would tell me 3 inches, 5 inches, something. So I talked to Chris Handoin about it, and he responded that he would get a hold of Mike and have Mike see if there was any issues with us raising that alley. And I haven't heard back from Chris after that. But I think it's doable if it's only a few inches.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to do that either way. So really and Aaron said that he can't go any farther in the project until we tell him drop floor or flat floor.
I guess it's kind of difficult to make that decision without knowing the difference in cost. Is it difference of $5,000 or $500,000? I mean,
Well, I'm assuming, and I had that discussion with him because the way we're building this building now, we're not gonna be able to finish it, so I'm assuming that we would still be able to finish the more highly needed areas of the building. We won't get the EOC and we won't get the meeting rooms and stuff like that, but we will get the ambulance bays, and the morgue would be done, and the health department would be done.
So why, I guess, okay, why the drop floor? Just for getting ADA and stuff? Is that the reason for that?
The grade going in.
The grade coming up from that, is it Second Avenue? Second
Second
Street.
Street.
Second
The
Street?
grade coming up from that street, because of the height of the increase in the level of the floor, would have to be,
Like 5 feet or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it would be a pretty sharp incline.
oh,
And there,
okay.
with the ADA restrictions, you couldn't make it work.
Okay.
So the only two options we have are to move the building north to flatten that incline, or put the drop floor in to flatten that incline for the doors on the south side of the building.
Which my favorite is not to have the drop down, but as a department head and looking for growth in the future, I think we always want to have growth. And I know I would be upset if somebody was pinching down my department and not allowing for growth. So I have to think of Keith and think, you know, he wants to potentially look for growth in the future. Probably not in his time, but further on. And I think we really do need to consider that, because you pinch them down and there's no growth. You allowed growth for me in the ambulance barn, adding a bay, and then potentially, you know, if search and rescue, if we really did grow, we would have that option probably to get that bay. You allowed for growth with Melissa, giving her probably twice as many offices that she has now. With, you know, we're looking for the future that there's growth. But if we pinch Keith down, we've shut his door for growth. And I really think we need to look into that. And I guess that was my question with the city. If they're going to allow us to add a few inches, what would it take us to add a little bit more to widen the building potentially, and then shorten it so that we don't pinch Keith so far? It's just a delay, but I feel like we've delayed this long. I think potentially we could maybe get that question answered, knowing if there was any way we could redesign the building or widen the building instead of lengthen it.
Great point. That's why we had this meeting, get those options. 'Cause
What
I-
about
I-
second coming in, and we're talking about the city there again? It's kind of a dead end street to the railroad.
Actually, from the alley east has been abandoned.
So,
There is no street there. People
So
still
why-
use it, but
could not the building be moved farther to the south then, if there's no street there?
they are aware that the street's been abandoned, and half went to city of Choteau, half went to Teton County. So, but they're aware of that. All these drawings admit that the street was closed.
So-
And I think we're as far south as we possibly can.
Yeah, they were taking
In
that
the-
into
yeah.
consideration,
Oh,
that
okay.
the street is closed. That's a good question.
I guess the only positive is if we did lower the spot where the ambulance sits, that's all concrete.
Mhm.
I mean, you're not gonna have
And
walls and stuff that would
it'd
be.
be a sump.
Yeah.
Correct.
That'll be drains.
Correct.
I mean, it's not the end of the world to have the drop down. I don't think it's most convenient. You know, carrying supplies in, all that. I mean, just anytime you start dealing with steps and stuff like
Sure.
that, then it's a whole nother element. But I think we need to prioritize which is our priority: allowing for opportunity for the sheriff's office in the future, or inconvenience of a step going up into an office in the ambulance barn. That's not my choice, but
So with the ADA, would you be able to have a step, or do you have
You
to
have
have
to have
an
a ramp.
incline?
well, there's the ambulance part doesn't have to be ADA, because no public goes into the ambulance bay part. So there is a ramp that goes all the way up 24 feet, I think, in
Right.
this drawing, that goes all the way up the hallway.
Okay.
So there is no step that would be for ADA.
Okay.
It's basically just in our ambulance barn, and it would be, when you get out of the ambulance, you'd have to make a step up to go into the office or into the storage, supply room. So not convenient, not ideal, but
Doable.
I think it is doable with we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think, I think that's what you want for department heads, is somebody that's looking forward to the future and somebody that is looking for growth, beyond your term as an employee. And so I think that's where Keith is going. And I mean, he's looking beyond. We don't know what's going to happen.
It's a little short-sighted,
Yeah.
you know, I guess.
Yeah.
Comment Al made 50 years ago, did the Flathead Valley or the Gallatin Valley anticipate the growth they've seen? So how, nobody knows.
Right.
And
You start, yeah.
it's a matter of, yeah, we're saving a little bit today and we're gonna pay a whole bunch 40 years from now. I mean, compared dimes to thousands of dollars.
So it was before my time and probably before yours, but when they built that sheriff's office, didn't they design it so it could be added on to the south
Correct,
and make it into a jail?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we had this meeting. I'm comfortable with the step down deal.
But
If that's
I
what
do
it
think
comes
I would
to.
like to look us into the option of
I'd
widening
I'd
the
like to know
building.
the difference in cost.
Yeah, widening the building if that's if we're only going up a couple inches and the city says, yeah, we can go up a couple inches. Well, I mean, is there room that we could go up further? Would that lessen the grade and maybe us be able to expand that building by 10 feet? I don't know. Those
Width-wise or lengthwise?
width-wise.
Because that's what's causing the narrow building is the grade that we had to put to
Yeah.
get to
Yeah,
the,
the
okay.
ADA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if, I
We-
mean,
we
that's
lengthened the
just
building
gravel.
there,
We know
yeah.
where to get that.
Well, and I mean, that's where it started, was 100 by 150, and then it went to 175 or whatever by
65.
65.
Yeah.
So maybe there is a compromise in between.
I don't know.
I mean,
think
if
it's
we're
worth
still,
looking
if we're
at.
gonna have the drop down on the south side, the 100 feet may be still the answer.
Yeah,
Depending
So
on the alley.
yeah.
what about going, again, I'm not totally involved, to the east more?
Or as far east as we
Railroad.
can to the railroad.
At the railroad,
Yep.
as far as.
Yeah.
They
Railroad
moved
issue.
it as far as they could with the railroad right away, and it still will require a few inches on the alley to build up to get the slope, because it's
Okay.
ADA, it's got, all
Yeah.
gotta be ADA compliant.
Okay.
And
Joe,
that's-
would Aaron be available if you called him right now and asked him for a cost?
I'm not sure about that. I think that if we were talking about different options, we probably should have Aaron come up and have another meeting. You're right, we're not gonna build it this fall anyway.
Is it possible to visit with the city, find out what their thoughts are on building up the alley and building farther to the east as far as building the grade up? And if that is a workable thing, then talking to Aaron and saying, okay, how much would we need to build it up to widen that building by whatever it would take to compact it a little bit and not being so long?
Yeah, I don't think it's the width anymore. I mean, we could go wider, I think.
Well,
But-
Well, we can't go that wide because we still got the alley
It
there.
depends on the city's response to building up the alley and
Yeah.
what they would allow us to do.
Yeah,
I think the only problem we'd have with the alley as far as buildings would be the
Annex.
annex. Everything else is high enough. The annex is right
Are you
there.
gonna create a problem of flooding in the annex?
Yeah.
If
You
build
couldn't
it?
build it up enough to where you did create the problem, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be a limiting factor,
Yeah.
even if the city was okay.
right.
Yep, that's a good point too.
Because the annex is down there. Where here, the sheriff's building's up and
Yeah.
everything else is up in the air. So, but yeah, I think if
You
you
might,
go
might be
with-
fixing one problem, creating
Yeah.
another.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But I think if it's gonna be a drop down on the south end, width-wise isn't gonna make
No.
that much difference.
No.
But that impacts you the most.
Yeah. It's not my first choice, but I think I have to look at the big picture and say, what's the future gonna bring? And is the future bigger than a little inconvenience?
I'm just real reluctant to tie the hands of our successors at some point
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's,
on abilities. When it gets to the point where you've got no choice, you have to do something.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, so do we want to set the tone for something costing a fortune down the road when funding isn't any better than it is today?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, we're all team players, and I feel like you've allowed us to grow, you've allowed the health department to grow, that I'm not sure we want to not allow Keith to grow too, or his department to grow.
Okay, so the first thing we gotta find out is how flexible the city's gonna be, and I will follow up with Chris on that. And then I will follow up with Aaron, and when we find that out, I will have a discussion with him, and probably he needs to come up for another meeting.
It'd be just interesting to see what the difference in cost would be.
Yeah, and he might be able to do that and
Yeah,
send us a plan and say, you know, would this
We don't
work?
need a meeting to get a number.
No, I don't think we need a meeting for a number, and I don't think we need a meeting for him to recreate a drawing that might work to send us. Then we can take a peek at it and see if that's
I think
something
you
we
should
would
be
work.
able to- The drop down shouldn't be that huge of a deal, I wouldn't think.
That's what I'm wondering. I don't know. I just,
I don't think it would be.
It's, that you'd end up having a two-part system, but I just can't see it being that big of a deal at all.
Well, and there's sort of some value in building the building that way anyway because of the necessary firewall, right?
Mhm.
Because that sort of creates a really natural point to do that.
Yeah.
good point.
Okay, well, I will talk to the city. I need to find out from them an answer first, and then I'll get back to Aaron.
Yeah. That's the single one, and then this is the stuff right here. The drop
Any
down,
other
which has
comments
the-
that,
Right here.
or questions that we need to ask Aaron?
I think just when he comes back with that answer, there's a couple other things on the interior that I just would have question on. You know, one was just maybe it's just in the drawing. It's not necessarily a double door
Sure.
going into the community room. And I think just minor things like that. Looking at the plan, I don't know. Did you have?
Yeah,
any other
I mean,
thing?
we had a very small amount of
Yeah.
feedback for them, which I can, I can just email to them too, and they
Yeah.
can, but overall, yeah, pretty darn close, so.
What was the feedback though? I think it needs to be said now while
Well, mine was that there wasn't a double door going into the community room, and one of them there was, and one of them there wasn't. So I think it was just maybe a drawing thing. I'm still concerned about that size of the community room. I really want that to make sure that that is the largest room, and they're not far off size-wise between the EMS training room and the community room. And I think if there's any way to alter that to make our community room the biggest, the EMS training room can be a little bit smaller. We don't need two huge rooms. I would like to see one big room and then a little bit smaller. And then I think on
This is keys.
no keys right here. And then one was a door, but I know that depended on if we could have a drop down, but I didn't know if there was a way to still even just have a step up in there. It's in our part where having a door but a step down, just a convenience for us versus clear at the far end of that 24-foot ramp. So just physical thing, just nothing.
Well, and again, we want to make it as good a building as we can before we start building, because we don't want to do changes after they start.
Right.
So
Right.
now's the time
Right.
to see something that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Now's the time to get after it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cutting that much off the width is a lot.
It's huge.
It's, yeah.
So what we
So I guess our feedback is sort of this center section of the health department. We'd like to move the lactation room over to this kind of little secondary waiting area. So we have a cluster of a WIC office, a child play area, and a lactation room all in the same location. So it was really just a matter of swapping some walls to move that to the other side and maybe adjusting the location of the lab, but all sort of within that central area of the health department there.
will send.
I'll draw it out with a pen and send it back to him.
Do you want us to send them back to them?
Yeah, if you've got changes,
Okay.
send it to Aaron. You've got his
Okay.
email.
Okay.
Because now is the time to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
All the utilities are in the alley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. you two give your information to Aaron, I will find out from the city, and I will find out what the cost differential between the drop floor and the flat floor is. Then we'll go from there.
Okay.
So if there's no other comments, then we'll close this meeting and
Wait
get
for the
back.
next one.
Yeah,
Wait for the
get
next
back
one.
to-
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thanks for coming, Keith.
Yep, sorry.